evening, everybody. This is your host, Huge Pop, from the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Our guest tonight is on the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, hails from Berkshire County, Massachusetts. He is an active pro wrestler known for his appearance in independent wrestling promotions across the northeastern United States. He is notably competitive in organizations such as Xtreme Wrestling Alliance, Wrestling Federation of America, World of Hurt. Our guest appeared on approximately 20 WWE shows as extra. Please welcome to the show, Justin Rando. Not to mention, he's also wrestling for the Dynasty. How you doing today, my friend?
Excellent. Very excited to be on.
Thank you for coming on, and I hope I got that intro right. I hope I hit
Yeah.
the spots. So, everybody, I assume that's in the wrestling business, was a fan when they were a kid. So my first question is always, what was it like for you growing up as a fan, and who were your favorite wrestlers?
Um, that's a good question, and I'm still a fan. So even though I'm doing it, I'm still, I think you're always a fan. And growing up, it was I grew up in the time of like Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man. I remember that, I would always go. My father wasn't a big wrestling fan, but my grandfather was a huge wrestling fan, and he lived next door. So I would always go over and we would watch like they used to run. I think it was the AWA on ESPN, and we would watch that in the afternoon sometimes. But every Monday, I would always go over and we would watch primetime wrestling before it became Monday Night Raw. And growing up, I think I was always like a big Ultimate Warrior, a big Macho Man, Randy Savage, and I always liked Bret Hart, even when it was the Hart Foundation before he broke off in the singles. Kind of always liked those guys. Were probably my favorite tag team, and just watching all those guys, growing up, and it was kind of one of those things where back then it totally wasn't like it is now. Like if you wanted to be a professional wrestler, you had no idea how to get into it. There was, you just were like, man, I'd love to be a pro wrestler, but how do I do it?
Right.
There was no thing like, you didn't, compete in high school as a professional wrestler, like you would baseball and work your way up through college and do all those type of things. It was kind of more of a secret to how you would get into it unless you knew somebody. But as I got older, it was like, I believe when I graduated college, my parents told me that if I graduated college, they would pay for me to go to wrestling school.
Okay.
And so I was kind of like, okay, because by then you kind of knew that there was wrestling schools out there. And at that time, I was looking around to see what there was, and I had found Chaotic Wrestling, which was based up in North Andover, and the trainer Mike Hollow and Duke Dalton were the guys that were up here training. They both came from Kowalski School, and now Kowalski's is closed. They had started that school up in North Andover, and so I did my research, and when I graduated, that's where I had gone for about 6 months, and through going there, I had met some guys who I went to school at Westfield State College, and so I was close to like Springfield, Mass, and Chicopee. There was another trainer in Chicopee, Kevin Landry, and so I, met some guys through. There was a Dr. Tom Pritchard camp that I did, and they were like, "Well, why don't you come train with us? Closer. You can still." I was still going to North Andover, but I didn't have to go as far. So I kind of went to his place and practiced a little bit and would train. And I started working independent probably like 2 years after. But I didn't stick around for long. I finished school and I ended up working, and starting like the real world.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I really moved to Florida, when I moved to Tampa, that I really started to get that itch to get back into it. And when I did, it was probably like 2010. I worked a few small shows down there before I ended up moving back to Massachusetts. And again, it was one of those things where maybe 2 years went by. I really wasn't doing too much in Massachusetts for wrestling. So really, I always really look at it as the last like 4 to 5 years is where I've really put in the time and dedication to where I was like, man, this is something that I really should have stuck with and not just kind of floated in and out of for so many years. And by chance, it was WFA where I was booked for a show, and it was probably my fifth match back, maybe. And I found out Mike Hollow was the trainer at was there at WFA, and they had a school elite training center up in New Hampshire,
Okay.
and it was funny to reconnect with him. He didn't even really remember me because that was 15 years ago, and
Yeah.
to really reconnect with Mike and to have the relationship I have with him now, where I train like weekly. Like I try to get to New Hampshire weekly. It's a 3-hour drive for me, but with shows on the weekends, I try to get there usually on a Tuesday or a Thursday to practice and keep getting the time in, because I lost so much time in the past where I was kind of bouncing in and out and not taking it as serious as I really should have at the time.
Now that is the Elite Training Center in New Hampshire, and isn't
Yeah,
that one of the top 5 WWID schools?
it is. Yep.
Okay, so
And
what is it like to be affiliated or connected with WWE ID schools? That school, does that put it above? Is that like a higher tier of a training school?
I think so, because if you kind of look at the training schools that they have, they took 5, and this one, the 2 trainers are Scott Reed and Mike Hollow.
Right.
The other schools are like Booker T, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, and I'm not sure who the other one is, but most of those have a bigger connection with WWE. And so for Mike and Scott to have gotten to that point where they were put in as one of the 5 and chosen, it just goes to show that the knowledge that they have and in the way that they conduct business. The school itself is beautiful, 2 rings. It's attached to a huge gym. It's got a green room. It has everything that you would possibly need, and the school itself is beautiful. And to be able to go there and train and not only that, but to be able to work with these guys who are in their 20s that are ID prospects, it's like, it brings a lot of people to Concord. I'll tell you that.
So, is there anybody out there, one of those guys in the 20s, that you feel is going to be the gem of it all that we should look out for?
A couple of the guys that I work with that are up there, that are under the ID, like Brad Baylor, who's already been, him and Ricky Smokes are a tag team, and they have been just killing it. They've already been on NXT. They've already had, quite a bit of success with just recently this ID program. Gall is another one who is up there, and he's fantastic. A guy that really just has like just an aura about like when he gives his promos and things like that that are really good. And Sean Legacy, who is another guy who's I've only got to work with once at WFA, but I'll tell you, he's already, I think he's in a triple threat this week on NXT.
Yeah,
So
that show's on tonight. Yep.
Yeah, there's a couple of those guys that just like, I mean, for them to be able to bring that to the independents and finally, I will say I know a lot of older guys, like not me, but my age, that are kind of bitter towards the fact that there's an ID program because they think it's like, and I'm going, listen, if that was us way back then, to have a program like this is fantastic for these guys because we didn't have something like that.
Right.
You either got signed or you didn't. You worked the independents or you didn't. And then you have the NIL program that WWE runs that pulls athletes from colleges and everything that are fantastic athletes that probably had, no thought of being a professional wrestler. And, when you're on the independents, you're like, man, I wish they had a program for guys like that. I'm a little older, so I know the ID program is probably not something that is really in my ballpark, but it's still great to get to work with all these guys and get to know them and see them, from a couple of years ago, seeing these guys come to practice, and then to 2 years later, you see them on TV, moving up to watching them on Evolve and already watching them on NXT. It's great. I mean, to me, I think it's fantastic to see these guys and watch them and follow
100%. Yeah. So, who were your biggest wrestling influences growing up? And any particular wrestler that inspired your style?
them. I think that my biggest as I got older and as I trained and I watched more and more tapes and more stuff. Um, I was always huge at Bret Hart. Always huge at Bret Hart and everything that he did. And Mr. Perfect was another one, like those guys. I think as you get older, your favorites transition from those guys that are like super, comic book heroes and superheroes to the guys that are like, when you understand the business and you start to learn the things that you're learning, you go, wow, this guy, why do I care about what this guy is doing,
Right.
as opposed to like what these guys are doing. And it's even changed now as I've gotten even older and watching it. Like I'm a huge Randy Orton fan because I just watch him having fun at his age, and he's my age, and it's like I think he might be a year older than me or something. But I watch those guys who've been there for 20, 25 years, and it's like he's out there just having fun. He can do whatever he wants, and people love him. It's just one of those things. And he's having fun. He's done everything there is to do, and but when you watch him, it's so cool to watch a guy do so little but mean so much and get the reactions that he gets. And I watch all his interviews, listen to his stuff, and Cody Rhodes is another one who he knew what he was worth, and he said, "I'm going to go out and prove to everybody what I'm worth." And he went out and did it with on the independents and came back and really kind of showed everybody and said, I knew this is what I could do, and I'd be the face of a company, and now he is.
Absolutely. You're a John Cena fan?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's another one too. I mean, back then, no, it felt like he was shoved down your throat, and it was that's who they wanted you to like. And now I watch it and I go, God, he can just do exactly what he says he's going to do, and go out there and get the reaction that he's going to get with like this, and to be a heel now,
Yeah,
it's
100%.
fantastic to watch him do it.
Last night was like epic. He was
Yeah, yeah,
I hated the WrestleMania moment. I hated that. But
yeah,
now as he's telling the story and
yeah,
as he's doing what he said he's going to do, and whether we like him or not, whether we hate him, he's doing his job. He's a heel,
yeah,
And so I laughed so hard last night when I watched that Saturday night's main event and R-Truth. That's another one. Dude. He just goes out and does. He has fun. That
yeah.
guy had a blast last night doing what
Oh yeah,
he
yep.
did. So that's cool.
Because I
So
watch scenes and I go, here's a guy who said, he went out and he had that match with Cody, and everybody was like, "Oh, that was so boring." It wasn't boring. And I go, but he basically told you that's what he was going to do. He said he's not going to have flashy entrance. He's not going to have lights. He's not going to do this thing. He's not going to go out and he's going to ruin wrestling for people. And, so it's like that's what his story is he's telling. But I think at the same time, they're telling that story of he's going to realize before it's all over.
yeah,
I feel like that's what they plant that, with you, that he
yep,
will eventually, before he leaves, realize
yeah,
what he loves about wrestling.
yep, absolutely, yep. And I think that WWE does a really good job at telling stories, and that is,
Yeah.
that's just amazing to me. Talk about telling stories. What was your first match like? And looking back, what do you remember most about that match?
My first match was a battle royal, and it was in man, I don't remember exactly where it was. It was Eastern Massachusetts. It was close to Boston, and I just remember I didn't have any gear at the time, and I was put in this battle royal, and I was one of the last guys. They wanted me to be one of the last guys, and just because I looked, they were like, "It looks good." Let's, and I never had a match before. I didn't even, you know, and my gear was like, God, I think it was like, I think I wore a Red Sox baseball jersey to the ring, and it was like, I think I wore like, I even want to say I wore like jean shorts or something like that, and did some kind of like this, you know, it wasn't even like this great, you know, gimmick type. I didn't even have a gimmick. I didn't even have like, I don't even know if I used what name I used. I really don't remember. I just remember that that was like the first real taste of like, oh, you're at this show and they needed guys for a battle royal and you were there to help. And you know, I hadn't really even, I wasn't really far into training, and they were like, oh, we just need, you know, somebody. And I remember Kevin Kelly was there, and he was in the back, and he had said like, are you one of the Hearts? He said I looked like one of the Hearts, and said, well, we're gonna keep you until like the last five guys. And I'm like, man, I don't even. But I felt great knowing, you know, who Kevin Kelly was for him to say something like that. And Title was like, oh man, I felt a lot of pressure for that, but I guess it went all right. I mean, you know, it was a pretty good experience. I think a battle royal is a lot of first experiences for a lot of guys.
Yeah, yeah. So, what's the biggest challenge you've faced in your wrestling career so far?
I think the biggest challenge is that, you know, people. There's a lot of guys that they don't. You feel like they don't put in the work that you put in, and some get like that overnight success. And a lot of it though is putting in so much time, so much effort in knowing the business and not knowing if it'll ever like really pay off to the point that you want it to. But I think what I've learned as I got older, because as I was younger, I used to get angry at that. Like I used to be like, you know, when I would leave, I would be, you know, when I would stop wrestling for a little bit, I would be like bitter towards it. Oh, how come this guy gets this? Or how come this guy's here and this guy's there? And how come I'm doing this and doing that? Like I never really understood until I got older, where I was like, you got to enjoy every part of it while you're doing it. Because when I look back now, and I look back at the last 5 years, I kind of go, I have done a lot. Like I may not have a job or a contract anywhere, but the things I've gotten to do, a lot of guys don't get to do. And when you talk to like, younger guys and they say to you, man, I hope I get to do the stuff that you got to do. You realize in a sense kind of that you did make it, you know, in a way.
Right.
Um, not everybody can be John Cena, not everybody can be CM Punk and Roman Reigns, but to be able to look back and go, when I was a kid watching it on TV and wanted to just do it, to actually being able to say like, yeah, I've been on Raw. You know, I didn't have a match on Raw, but to be able to say, you know, I worked with Bobby Lashley on Raw, and you know, I got to work with Brock Lesnar on Raw, and Rhea Ripley, Ronda Rousey, I got to work with at the Survivor Series in Boston, and to be able to say that, I mean, it's kind of crazy to not think that you at least made it in some way and that it wasn't a waste to put in all that time and all that travel and, you know, the constant no's and the constant, you know, just disappointments that a lot of times you get. But I feel like the last few years have been really my payoff so far. I've had the opportunity for like the last 2 years to be brought in as an extra consistently on Raw. Um, Gotten to, like I said, work with some great, you know, great people on those shows, guys that like you would never think in a million years, 10 years ago that I would have got to even work with. Um, the being given the opportunity to hold three titles at the same time on the independent, you know, like again, back a couple of years ago, I was opening the match, I was opening the shows, and I was getting beat, you know,
Yeah.
like, and it was, you got 6 minutes, go out, the other guy's over, that's it. You know, and to now fast forward to now every time I basically go to a show, it's like I'm always there till the end because I'm always in either the match before the main event and the semi-main event, or I'm in the main event, and I'm like, okay, so yeah, I have progressed in that sense, you know, even on the independent. And then to transition and have to be working as a referee, because that was another thing that I had done as I got older, because I'm 44 now. So
Okay.
when about a year ago, I kind of said, like, well, what if I start working as a referee? You know, I could easily, a lot of people were like, you fit the bill perfect for a referee, a TV referee for WWE. I even had some conversations with some producers about it, and they were like, yeah, let's see what you look like. So I went out and transitioned and became a ref. And a lot of guys like working with me as a ref because I also wrestle. So
Right.
there's not many refs that really wrestle. A lot of refs are guys that wanted to wrestle but were too small or they too nervous or scared or whatever to pursue wrestling. So they said, well, I'll just be a ref. And so for me to transition into the referee has been a whole different, and it actually helped my in-ring work, becoming a referee. Like, you wouldn't think it would, but once I became a referee, there was a lot of things I was able to watch and see, like, right there firsthand, and be able to take away to go back to my matches and say, like, if I put in this position or this spot, what are we going to do here? Because I watched it happen and it didn't work.
Right.
And so it makes it a better, I think it was very helpful. I think that they almost should, have you kind of be trained both as a wrestler and a ref, just to be able to have the knowledge of, like, not only that, but the use of a referee in a match,
Right.
To be able to use the referee to both your abilities. Like, if you have two guys working together, you really have a third guy in there that can be helping you just as much.
Right.
And that doesn't happen a lot of times. And I find with me, they try to utilize me a lot because they're comfortable. I've either wrestled them in matches or they know me and they know, like, that I do wrestle, and they're like, well, yeah, we're going to use you for this. And it's been really kind of cool. I like, people ask me all the time, what do you like better, wrestling or wrestling? I go, I don't know. I said, some days when I get there wrestling, I'm kind of like, man, I really wish I was wrestling tonight. But then I'll ref and it'll be a great show, and I'll go, man, that was fun. I'm really glad I ref tonight. And then
Right.
like, it's if you love wrestling, it doesn't matter what you're doing.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. So
Yeah.
are those two of your titles behind you?
Yeah, these are two of them. Yeah, this is the XWA, and this is the World of Hurt right here.
All right.
So I have those two. I have the ATWF, but that one I don't have with me. That one he still has.
All right. So what is something that fans don't realize about the life of an independent wrestler?
Man, I'd say probably the time away that you really are away. Like, you're on the road just as much. Even though it's usually only Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Depending on where I'm going, I may leave Thursday night to get there, so that I'm there early for Friday. If it's a show that ends late, a lot of times you're there another night. A lot of times, like, my girlfriend Tammy travels with me quite a bit. She's always with me. And so, like, a lot of times we'll leave a day early, just to get down there and check in, and, that way get up in the morning so I can find a gym, go to the gym, and then get to the show. Then the show, she always helps with the show. She's actually gotten quite into wrestling too. She does a lot of meet and greets. She does, like, a lot of the concessions. She'll run tickets. She'll do a lot of stuff for a lot of these promotions. Sometimes I get there and they're like, "Is Tammy with you?" And I'll go, "Oh, she didn't come tonight." "Oh, yeah, we needed her tonight. We needed her to do this." And it's like, but 90% of the time she's with me, so they're always glad. Sometimes I think they're happier to see her than they are me. And so that, and then a lot of times if the shows end 10, 11 o'clock, and it's a 4-hour, 5-hour drive home, you don't want to drive home that night, so you're there another night. There's a lot of times shows will run, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they're all in different places, a couple hours away. So it's like, we have to figure out, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in this town that night and then leave the next morning, or do you want to leave that night and drive all the way to the next town, check into the hotel late, so that we don't have to travel the next day? So it's like, there's a lot that goes on. I could name already in the last, like, 3-4 months of the birthdays and holidays and anniversaries and weddings that we've missed because we're gone. Nope, we're not here. Nope, we're not here. And it's always, you know, always somewhere. And it does, it's just as, time consuming is anything. And it's your own money too.
Yeah.
Everything's coming out of pocket. Your merchandise, you're paying for your own merchandise that you're selling. Um, you can have really good weekends with selling merchandise, and you're like, oh man, we killed it, but you're still always just breaking even, or maybe making a little more to pay for more merchandise to get for the next. So a lot of it comes out, of your own pocket, and it's, like I said, the travel and the merchandise and your gear comes. You got to buy new gear, and you got to get gear fixed. So there's a lot you put into it. Then even for me, the time traveling for practice, to just go to practice for a day or two a week. 3 hour drive, practice for 3 hours, 3 hour drive home.
Right.
And
Man,
it's
exhaustion,
very,
it seems like.
it is, it's very tiring too. So
Yeah.
it's a full-time job, but part-time work. I mean, well, I don't know if that makes sense, because you're putting in work all the time. When I'm
Right.
home, it's going to the gym, it's, eating and eating right and doing meals. And so I think a lot of guys think, that it's, hey, I'll go to wrestling school and I'll get done and I'll just start wrestling. And they don't, and you see it more nowadays, that guys don't put in the time at the gym or their diet or practice. Once they start getting shows, they stop going to practice. It's like, oh, I'm on shows, I don't need to go to practice anymore. And that's
So
not the case.
do you find that those young bucks have that same mentality of not listening to vets like you in the business, and when you guys try to talk to them in the back, do they give you that attitude, or I've been in a couple matches, I don't need your help?
No, I actually get the opposite. There's a lot of young guys that I gotta say, they contact me, and when we talk backstage, they're like, man, what do I have to do to, like, you know, do the things that you've done? And I that sounds weird to me, because I don't think that I'm like, that I've done anything. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, what do you mean what I've done? And it's like, well, they're like 20, I'm 44, and they're like, well, I want to hold an independent title. I want to be an extra at Raw. I want to, do these things. I want to have a body. I want to get bigger. I want to be tan. I want to do all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And I find that once I sit and talk to them, they stay in contact with me. And a lot of times they'll send me matches to look at. They'll send me, and by no means, I'm no trainer. I'm not like, nowhere near perfect. But they'll ask for advice. They'll say, what do you think of this? They'll say, do you think that this is good? Do you think I should have done something different here? This is what I'm doing for the gym. This is what I'm eating. This is how many days I'm training. This is how many days I'm going to practice. So, I mean, no, I've actually had the opposite. Quite a few that have come to me have actually been really, really receptive to the things that I've said, that that if you want to do it, you got to do it. I told a lot of guys, like, that we do, the Gabe Sapolsky, he runs the camps a lot of times. He does those seminars and that. And I tell the young guys, man, I did 3 of them in the last 4 years, and they were well worth it, just for the feedback alone, just to be able to get to sit with him and get his feedback and have him know who you are,
Right.
and to be able to, sit and talk to him. And I said, you guys got to, like, think about it. It's $99. You're going to invest in yourself $99 to go and sit through a seminar, and then have a match in front of him so that he can critique it. And it's something that, oh, it's $99. Think about what you spend $99 on. If you're not willing to invest $99 in yourself to just be seen, in front of somebody that, currently works for WWE, and who is, pretty much the guy that books you to come in as an extra and get your foot in the door, like, why wouldn't you want to?
Right.
And so I always say to those guys, and a lot of those guys have made the trip. Every time he's come to New Hampshire, I let all these guys know from all over that are younger guys, and they say, well, I'm not ready. I go, you don't have to be ready. Go, listen to his feedback, listen to what he's saying, and then go work on it. Then
Right.
come back a year later, or 6 months later, when he has another one, and let him see that you worked on it.
Right.
And there's been guys that it's actually worked for, that they've, had the opportunity to go, man, yeah, you were right. That was worth going. It's a lot of takeaways from it. And, if you're not willing to invest the $99 to go, and sit and they're good seminars, the stuff he talks about, everything that you learn and the things like that. It's interesting. It's fun. It's if you're a wrestling fan, I spend 24 hours a day thinking about wrestling, watching wrestling pretty much. And if you're willing to do that, then going and sitting and listen to somebody talk about their journey through wrestling and how they got to places and what happened when they got frustrated. I've done seminars like Delirious did one that was great, that was up at Elite, and his was 100% different. It was catch wrestling and in-ring wrestling and calisthenics and conditioning. And Gabe's you go to, and his is great because it's a lot of lecture, but it's a lot of stuff that you need to know. And then
Right.
it's, matches. And then there's other guys that it's kind of a mix of both. Dr. Tom, I've done his, and his are great. He's one of the guys that, since I've ever been involved in wrestling, his name was at the top as a trainer, and as the guy that is trained the best. So why wouldn't you want to go see him? Why wouldn't you want to
Right.
go work in front of him and have him tell you what he thinks?
Absolutely.
That's just,
100%.
but I've been pretty lucky, and these guys listen.
Yeah. I had the opportunity to, and it didn't click with me at first. A year later, the words that I heard click. For instance, I went to a convention over at St. Augustine, the River City Wrestling Convention, and
Yep.
Teddy Long was there. Of
Yep.
course, Teddy Long has a podcast. Of course, I'm a podcast guy. I want to go up and ask the guy, and he struck me wrong because he said, "Well, to talk to me, you need to pay me $200."
Yep.
I'm like, $200 for a small guy like me. I'm like I stepped back. I was like, what? But as I processed that, it took me a year. I'm like, you know what? If I'm not willing to invest or learn from the guys that know what the hell they're doing,
Right.
then I have no business doing what I'm doing. Right. So now I'm starting to go, okay, so if I can buy 5 coffees at $12, my wife and I buy 5 coffees at $12 a pop each week.
Right.
That's $100.
Exactly.
Why can't I not buy one coffee for 2 months, for every, so that I can save that $100 and invest if I really want to do what I want to do. So I get what you're saying. You got to invest in yourself if that's what you really want. So I appreciate that.
And that's the thing, is because we spend so much money on stupid things that you don't think about, and then to find something that actually would mean something to you, you question whether or not you should do it.
Yep.
And it's like I said, the seminars that and believe me, I was criticized by all the guys that are my age that were like, "Oh, you're going to this seminar, you don't need that, you don't need that, you don't need that." And I was like, looking back, I go, but after I did these things, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and these doors opened, and I knew what to do here, I knew what to do here because I had gone to these. And I guess it's all in how you take it. And there's a lot of guys that are my age that are bitter because it was, something that they want to be, on top of wrestling, and they didn't make it. And I was one of those guys back then that was the same way. As you get older, you start to go, oh, it's not worth it, blah, blah. But like I said, when I really just stopped and thought about it the last 4 years and said, you know what? I'm getting older. I love doing this. I'm going to do everything that I can to spend time in the ring, whether it's shows, whether it's wrestling, whether it's wrestling, whether it's practice, whether it's seminars, whatever it is, I'm just going to do it and have fun and enjoy it and see what happens. That's all. I just started having fun. And then things happen. Good things happen. You get a call to do this, you do this. I'm doing more podcasts now than I've ever done. People reach out to me to do podcasts. It's like, and you don't think about that, but that's the type of stuff. I wasn't doing podcasts 10 years ago. I wasn't holding independent titles 10 years ago. I wasn't doing WWE TV 10 years ago. I wasn't any of that stuff.
Right.
And now I get to say I've done all that because and it's not strictly because, you know, you go to the seminars, but the work you put in and the time you put in and listening to the right people and doing the right things and not complaining, not being upset with how you're used somewhere. And it's just like, once you just say to yourself, like, this is what I want to do I'm going to do this and have fun and enjoy every minute of it, because one of these days it's going to be, you can't do it anymore.
Right.
So why not? Why not just have it and do it where you can and enjoy doing it? And and that's where you might find other roads. That's why I said, you know, now I've got my foot in wrestling for a couple promotions. So if the wrestling did completely stop, well, now I could still go rep on independence when I wanted to. I've got to rep some great matches. I get to, you know, there's a lot of matches I've gotten to rep with some pretty good guys and some talent that's going to be right there. You know, 5 years from now, you're going to be watching WrestleMania, and I'm going to be going, I worked with all these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that's another bonus too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right, 100%. Because I look back and I like a couple guys. I say, oh, yep, I had them on the show about 2 months ago. Yep, I had him on the show. You know, and so it's just part of the business. And if you love it, you're going to do it. If you don't, then it's time maybe for you to say goodbye, I guess. Right. So
yeah, exactly.
I've watched some of your matches on the YouTube, and I'm hoping I get this right, because it looks like sometimes your finishing move is your version of the Stone Cold Stunner. Am I right?
Yeah, I've been kind of using that. It's funny because, like, you know, I mean, I really didn't. It kind of just happened ironically, because I would always, for some reason, in a Royal Rumble or a Battle Royal, or, you know, a Rumble, whatever. Um, Fox Vineyard, who I'm friends with, every time I would get into a Rumble and I would slide in, somehow I'd always come face to face with him, and he'd say, "Give me a stunner." I'm like, right, and I give him one, and I was like, why do you always tell me to do that? As soon as you know, you always tell me to do that. He goes, I don't know, because everybody knows what it is. You kind of look like Stone Cold, and I'm like, yeah, I know. But then I started thinking about it, and I was, you know, trying to think about, you know, what other stuff I would like to use. You know, as they started getting more wins, I kind of needed something, right? And I never really had that problem before, because a lot of times if I won, it was you know, small package or a schoolboy or a quick win, you know, got over on the guy. And once I started becoming established and I was winning titles, I kind of had to have like a finisher, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm not that big of a guy. I'm only like 5'7", 5'8" with boots on, and you know, I'm like, I can't really do anything to like these huge guys, and it's kind of like a stunner you can do to everybody, and everybody knows what a stunner is, and you know, I mean, I'd probably, if I could come up with something more creative that I could do to everybody, but a lot of the guys, like when I listened to them, that's what they said, you know, like Randy Orton, he says, well, the reason I came up, started doing the RKOs, because I could give it to anybody, I could hit it out of nowhere. I don't do a lot from the top rope, so I'm not going to have some huge, you know, finisher from the top rope. Submission, I mean, there's only a few things that you know, or you could use a figure four, or you could use a sharpshooter, or you could do, you know, something like that. But I kind of like the quick, out of nowhere type thing. So for now, that's kind of just what I've been sticking to, because I'm a smaller guy and I can easily hit it on, if I'm working a guy that's, you know, 6'5" and he's, you know, 280. I don't have to worry about trying to pick him up and hit something that looks, you know, credible. So yeah, I kind of just
your version's pretty good, man. Your version's pretty good.
Thank you. I
Absolutely.
mean, and it's like, you know, when you start getting older too, it's the same thing. Is you don't want to be doing these things that, you know, could hurt. You know, you get hurt. For me, if I get hurt and I'm out for 6 months, that's a long time to be on the shelf. You know, 6 months to a year, forget it. You know, that's a long time at my age to go. You know, and especially only being at the indie level that I'm at. Like, you can't afford to be out of sight for 6, 8 months.
Right.
You know.
So XWA, you're the current champion there.
Yep.
So is there anybody that's a nuisance to you that you'd like to share a little bit about? is what's going on in that? What's going on with XWA?
XWA is great. I love XWA for the fact this is the Jerry Idol, the guy who runs XWA, based out of New York, came to Pittsfield, Mass, which is where I live, and decided he was going to run a show here. And he was able to do it at like the Mosaic Temple, like the Masons, the temples that they have, like the Masons, Freemasons have.
Huh?
And he was able to get a contract with them to do 6 a year, so he could run one every other month. So it's my hometown, where I was born and raised, where I live now, that I moved back to. And I'm like, man, this is great. Like, I get to wrestle in my hometown every other month. So I said, yeah, Jerry, I'll do it. And it didn't start. It started out like, I had a cancellation, and he was running a show. I called him last minute and said, listen, I know you're already all booked, but my show was canceled. Do you think I could come to work? You're having the XWA Rumble. Just throw one more guy in there, throw me in there, and I live there, so it's not a big deal for me if I'm only driving down the road to do a quick spot in a Rumble, and it'll be fun. I'm sure I'll have some people from my hometown that'll want to come see it since I'm doing it. So he goes, yeah. And then about 2 days later, right before, I got a message that I was going to be opening the show with a match and then doing the Rumble. The guy that I was working with in the opening match is somebody that I love working with. We've worked so many times together that it's just fun. And his name's Punk. And it's not CM Punk. It's it just goes by Punk. He's been around for a while, and him and I just have like really good chemistry when it comes to working. And so we opened the show. We had a good solid like 6-7 minute opening match. We finished it off in the Rumble where he comes out right after I do. I'm in. I had beaten him earlier in the opening match. He slides in. He looks at me. He says, I'm coming for you. I said, come on. He comes running. I just drop down, pull the rope. He goes right over.
Nice.
So he goes out within 2 seconds of being in there. So we started that. That was a nice little, introduction to being part of XWA. And then from there, I just started getting a few more matches. And he says, well, we're going to have you go for the belt. And I said, okay. I said, that'll be good. He said, we'll think we're gonna put it on you or whatever. And I said, all right. I said, hey, it's my hometown. I will absolutely have no problem with you doing that. And so we ended up getting to the point where it was, I think I went on a 6-show winning streak before so almost a year for them.
Yeah.
Before they said, okay, now is the time. We're going to put it on you. We built you up a little credibility. You haven't lost here, and so now we're gonna have you do it. So that was great to actually win like the championship in my hometown, and he's been drawing really well there. I mean, he's been coming close to at least between 150 and 200 per show. Some have been a little bit lighter, but since it started to build over the last 2 years of being here, he's never, dropped below 100 at all. And I don't think he's ever had less in a later month. You know what I mean? Like it's always been from, it's always crept up, even if it was like 5 more people. But like the show that we just had last was me and the Music Man in a Pittsfield street fight.
Okay.
Yeah. That was probably one of my favorite matches. That was really fun. That was such a great time. The crowd was so into it because they had never seen it. Because XWA, they are an old school type, wrestling. It's characters. It's nothing crazy. It's you don't see all this crazy stuff. It's a very good kids show. He runs at 5 o'clock at night, so there's a lot of kids that go to these shows. It's real clean. It's real fun. So for 2 years later for them to come out with a Pittsfield street fight, nobody knew what.
Nice.
These guys didn't know what to expect. A lot of them are young kids. They just started liking wrestling because they were coming to this. And so for them to be able to see something completely different from what they were used to in the last few years are straightforward matches. You know, win,
Right.
loss, no goes outside the ring, no chairs, no weapons, no type of things like that. So for this, it was kind of a complete difference. And man, they loved every minute of it. And it was so much fun to be able to do that. And that was our last show because then he breaks for 3 months over the summer, and we come back September 13th.
Okay.
But the quality of his show in 2 years has increased greatly because, again, him and Mike Hollow, my trainer, had known each other and hadn't been in contact for like 20 years.
Right.
Them back in contact. So now the students from Elite started coming to work for XWA. So now he's got a lot, his talent increased and the ideas and the different things, everything started to just, so over the course of the last year, really, everything has just stepped up volumes for this promotion. And it shows because I go around my hometown, man, and everywhere I go, it's, when's the next one, champ? Hey, you're gonna be, hey, who you got next, champ? All this stuff, you know. We go to everyone. Just today I was at the grocery store and somebody, hey, you're Rando, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He goes, we go to all your shows. My daughter just got into wrestling and she loves it. And when are you guys back? And so Pittsfield's a small town. There's not a lot of stuff to do. And for something like this, it's really, really cool to have. We have a thing during the summer that's called First Fridays where they close off the street and they have vendors and all this stuff. So we'll be doing that during the summer where you can come out and buy our merchandise and you can talk to us and take and just all that, you know, all that fun stuff. And we've been thinking about different things we can do, like maybe we can do thumb wrestle or arm wrestle or XWA superstar at the, you know, the First Fridays and, you know, just little things like that. But it's a really good, the venue is great. The owners of the building are great. I love Jerry. He's one of those old school guys, just, you know, been around. He's a promoter. It's just, I have a great relationship with Jerry, and it's really fun to be able to get there and go to work with all those guys. And, you know, to be able to have guys that I train with up in New Hampshire getting their foot in the door there and start coming. It's just been, you know, it's been a real great experience to be able to be in my hometown and be able to wrestle every other month here for the last 2 years.
Wow. I seen an interview with you that you were in a thumb war with the guy that interviewed, so I seen that. That's pretty funny.
Yes. So I actually have from the International Wrestling Hall of Fame that's in Albany, New York.
Okay.
I actually have a custom thumb ring.
Oh.
So we could bring that out, and you know, it's pretty cool because at the Dynasty, I've actually gotten to do. I was a special guest referee for Seth Turner, who is one of the heads of the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and Dan Severn. They had a thumb war match. Dan Severn had Tony Atlas with him, and I was the special guest referee for the thumb war match. And yeah, we've played that thumb war thing. It's pretty cool. They bring that everywhere to a lot of shows. They have a working relationship with the Dynasty, so at different shows they bring the thumb war table there. They give one out as a raffle, and these things are pretty cool. They're pretty cool to have. So I have one, and I'm thinking like we might have to start bringing that to the First Friday and say, hey,
absolutely, yeah,
come down and thumb wrestle a wrestler.
That's a good sales pitch, man.
It is. It's fun. It's fun too, you know.
Yeah. So September is your next XWA. Do you know who your opponent will be?
I don't yet. I just beat the Music Man twice. I beat him prior to the street fight and then in the street fight. So I don't know if we'll be having a third or if I'll be moving on to somebody new come September. But September 13th, right here in Pittsfield, yeah, we'll be doing another one.
World of Hurt. Talk to us about World of Hurt. Is there anybody in your sights at World of Hurt?
Well, World of Hurt was actually the promotion that got me back into wrestling, and I got to give Shane all the credit for that because Shane Alden was like, a guy that decided in 2020, it was 2020, he was going to run a show in Pittsfield. And I was just working a regular job, and a lot of the guys knew I wrestled, and they said, "Hey, are you wrestling on that show?" I said, "I haven't wrestled in, a decade. I don't know. I haven't wrestled in forever. I haven't been in a ring." And they said, "Oh, you're not wrestling in it?" I said, "Nah." And I started kind of putting out feelers to some people that I knew about the World of Hurt show. And they said, "Well, just contact Shane. Ask him. Like, he'll probably put you on because you live there. Just, reach out to him." So I sent him a message. I said, "Shane, I live in Pittsfield. I was wondering about if you had if you're having like a battle royal or you're doing something, if I could be part of it. I haven't wrestled in forever how long, but I think it'd be really cool if I got to wrestle in my hometown. I've never wrestled in my hometown." And he messaged me back, and I ended up meeting with him. And he says, "Well, if I'm going to bring you in, though," he's like, "you're going to have a match." And I said, "Oh, I don't know." I said, "I have a," he goes, "No, no, no. You'll have a match. It'll be fine." So he put me with somebody, Owen Brody, who was great to have as a guy to come back against. We just good chemistry for not being in the ring for like 5, 6, 7 years or however long it was at that point, and to be able to like go out there, match before intermission, day after my 40th birthday, best shape I've probably been in. Pandemic had just ended, and I had a great like 7-minute match with him. I won, beat him with a DDT. Had a just had a great match that was, I mean, not great, but it was it was a perfect match to come back with. And from there it just was like that was it. I was like, man, I think I'm back. I was like, that's just it. I said, I don't know. I told my girlfriend, I said, I just don't think I cannot not do this again. I said, because that was just way too much fun. I said, and I miss it. And so the next thing I knew, it was by May, I was doing extra work for WWE, and that was it. And then continued to work for World of Hurt. Shane and I are great friends. He's another guy that he runs the promotion. He promotes. He does great stuff like Make a Wish Foundation shows, which are fun. Obviously, he does a bunch of different, charity shows and things. He did Toys for Tots was in Pittsfield. That's what he did with the Marines. So I mean, that was a great promotion to come back with. And finally this year, I took the title for World of Hurt.
Awesome. You mentioned extra, so I'm going to play something for you. Then we're going to talk about that. Okay. You got to tell me how that post felt, man.
That was awesome. That was my first time on TV too. That was my very first time. It was in Hartford. It was in Hartford, Connecticut, and I found out that I was going to be working with him on the MVP lounge segment, and it was me, Ichiban, and Channing Thomas. And what an experience that was when I found out, like, so you're going to be working with Bobby Lashley. We met with him, and he says, what do you guys want to do? We were like, what? We're like, you're Bobby Lashley. You don't have to go. Like, what do you? And he's like, no. He's like, let's make you guys, start tonight. And he was such a great guy to work with, man. It was so much fun, so much fun. And to be able to do that and be not like a lot of the extra stuff you see now. You see 15 guys come on and down,
Right.
and it's like we were 3. There was 3 of us, and we were that segment. Like when you saw him coming down, there was just 3 of us standing there, and it was just so. That is probably one of my favorites. And I got to do a SmackDown extra segment where it was just myself and Madcap Moss. And that was him going backstage looking for Baron Corbin,
Okay.
and he's like storming through the backstage, and he just comes upon me and starts yelling at me, asking me if I know where he is, and it was 30 seconds, but it was 30 seconds of just him and I on camera.
Right.
And the next morning, I had so many people saying they saw it viewed on. It was on WWE.com. I have the thing was right here. That's the picture from him and I. I'm standing there face to face with him. That was on WWE.com. Click here and
Yeah.
watch it. So again, it's like I've had some pretty awesome experiences of being able to work with these guys. Finding out I was working with Brock Lesnar was like one of the greatest. That was like it was somebody that I never thought in a million years I'd ever get to work with because he was never there. He was never really there.
Right.
And I showed up in Brooklyn and they were like, had 6 of us or 8 of us. And they said, you guys are going to work with Brock. And I was like, that's the one guy I really wanted to work with. And I thought I never, ever would get the chance.
So how does that work? Do you show up at the arenas knowing that there's an event somewhere, or do you get invited to that arena?
Oh, you have to get invited. You have to
Okay.
do. So I have to go every 6 months. I have to have blood work done. I have to have a physical. They have to have everything updated on file. And then it goes through, like I said, Gabe Sapolsky handles the extra talent, and you get emails from him. If you're available, can you do this day? Can you be here? Can you be here? And of course, you always say yes because
Of course, yeah.
you're not gonna, even if it's like I did DC, Buffalo, Albany, Hartford, Boston, Rhode Island. What else is around here? I'm trying to think of all the other arenas. But I mean, I would just do them anywhere that was pretty much between here and Canada and,
Nice.
DC area. Like,
You were just this week at one of the iconic arenas, 2300.
I was.
So you talk about that experience and NWA. You went to the NWA show, I assume.
I did. That was at the 2300 Arena. Never been there. And so that was, for me, that was just cool to just be able to go. To be able to, get to the NW, get to the 2300 Arena and walk in and see it and know everything that went on there with ECW. It was the coolest arena. Like it was the way it was set up was awesome. And to be invited to go with the NWA like that was like to be able to see their production. I think that's the coolest thing that you get to see is like because you go so early, you see how everything works and what goes into it. And a lot of times people don't. You talked about earlier, like what fans don't see what goes into it. But I mean, you have a lot of people working on these things. You have a lot of people working for WWE, the hands that are involved to put on a show, to see what they do backstage, and I mean, they're doing this every day. Like they're breaking down and setting up that day to go somewhere else to do it again 2 days later, to break it down and set it up and travel again and set it up and do. And when you see the sets, it's like, how did somebody do this in one day? And make it look like this. But NWA was great. It was like to show up there and to their setup for the Crockett Cup was awesome. The staging was great. Was a great setup. The fans, the outside merchandise area that they had set up, and the Crockett Cup, and you get your picture taken. There was guys there like that were signing autographs out in the concourse, like the Blue Meanie was there. So so I mean, you got Rhino was on the show. WWE allowed Natalia to be there. So it was just a great experience altogether. It was a laid back, it was fun, and it was to see their production things go very similar to the way something would be run like through WWE, just a smaller, in a smaller scale.
Right.
but like I had a great time, and that's something that I'd like to pursue and do more of is to do the NWA and try to get to. They travel a little bit further, they're a little bit farther than just the Northeast.
Right.
Like I said, I went to Philly. Um, I knew they had the next weekend they were in Cleveland. I know they do Chicago.
Yeah.
They're a little further south. They do Tampa.
Yep.
But again, when I look at it, to me, it's not like, oh, I got to do this. I got to travel there for. No, it's like I want to do it.
Right.
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 If you tell me to go, I'll go. If you ask me to be there, I'll be there. I'll find a way.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping that something with that is that's another opportunity I'd like to pursue is seeing to do more with the NWA. They're a reputable, big established promotion. They've been around forever. And they continue to grow. Billy Corgan's doing a fantastic job with running that promotion and seeing the crowd that was there. I mean, they were sold out in my eyes. They were, if you were standing room only, it was loud, real loud. They were into it. Wrestling fans, Philly's a great, fan base of wrestling. Always has been. Obviously, they built ECW there. And so I think it was great to see something like an independent promotion that's not completely independent because it is a franchise type,
Right. Absolutely.
But on that scale, to see a crowd like that show up and stay for 4 hours. I mean, it started at 7. I think it ended at 12.
Right. No. I have often wanted to, because you see a lot of content creators out there do reactions or do to the WWE, AEW, and SmackDown and Raw shows, and I focus a lot on the indie scene, right? And I often wondered if anybody would watch NWA reaction if I did a live show. And my wife says, "What does it matter? Do you want to have fun? Are you going to have fun? Choose what you want to watch. Choose your brand, and do your shows." And so I've been really thinking about possibly finding out when they do their shows, their weekly shows or whatever, and do a NWA type of reaction show. So it's in my works in June sometime. I don't know if it'd be even possible. I don't know where I find NWA on, other than on the YouTube and stuff like that. But that is a thought that I've had.
They're streaming on Roku.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah.
They have it streaming on Roku, and you could do. I think why not do something that nobody's done?
Right, exactly.
Like somebody's gonna watch it.
Right. So
because
look out for the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast to do reactions to NWA shows, man.
Well, and that's the thing is like I watch NWA, but going there, I found myself looking to watch it more.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, where can I go and find these guys? These guys are really good. I want to watch with these guys. So a good friend of mine is Spencer Slade. Spencer's with NWA. Okay. And so he was the one who said, he's been telling me, like, let's get you to NWA. You got to come down, see what it's like, see what their production is like, meet the people you need to meet and do all that. Like, I didn't work at NWA on Saturday. I wasn't there to work. Right. Kind of more or less go and network and meet the people and introduce myself and all that. And, but now you find yourself, like I find myself like, ooh, let me see what those guys do. I watched them wrestle 3 times, or I'll watch them do this and watch them cut up promos. Where can I find these guys? And then you're watching it, and then you start to watch more of it, and you go, hey, these guys are pretty good. Yeah. Oh, they wrestle these guys. I like those guys too. And it's got that old, the way that when I watch these matches too, it's got that old ESPN, AWA, NWA type feel. You know what I mean? Like it had that camera feel was like the old stuff, like you would be watching on ESPN, like the classics where it would have NWA or AWA. Really, it was cool. It's a different style. It's not it's not all the fireworks and loud music and stuff going on with WWE. It's
Right.
a completely different wrestling fan base.
Look out for
But
that on the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast.
yeah.
So
I think it's
is Spencer? Is he Spencer Chisholm you're talking about?
yeah. Yep.
Okay. I sent him
Yep.
a message to invite him to see if he'd want to come and share his story, but he never got back with me. So
Yes, he's contracted under them.
okay,
I met him through Elite and WFA,
okay,
and we've been friends now for like 2 years, and it's hard to find friends in the wrestling business too.
oh, yeah,
Um, you really it really is like you meet so many people and you stay in touch with some people and you stay in touch. But the thing that Spencer's done to me, the reason that he is honest with everything with me. Like, this is what you need to do. You need
yeah,
to, like, and he'll get straightforward and he'll be harsh with me and he'll tell me,
right,
but that's how I know, like, him and I, have been, friends for like 2 years. And, he finally came up to the Dynasty, and wrestled up here in Albany. Um, that's another promotion that's doing great things. And he finally came up. I've been telling him, man, you should come up and check it out. The production is really great. They've been having guys from NWA come out there. Why don't you come up? And Chris got a hold of him. Envy's the one who runs the Dynasty. And he came up, and I told Spencer, I said, I'll pick you up from the airport. I said, I'll bring you to the airport because I had to wrestle here in Pittsfield. Then
okay,
I had to drive over to Albany to be at Dynasty that night.
all right, okay,
So I got there just in time as intermission was ending to be at the Dynasty. And
nice,
then, Spencer came and stayed with me, and I brought him the next morning. We went to the gym, and I brought him to the airport. But yeah, he's been somebody he's the guy that's like brutally honest with me. We watch stuff together, and he'll tell me like, do this, don't do that. This is, it's a different aspect. I have my trainer, Mike Hollow, who has done tons for me and got me to like, he's that guy that's persistent on your ring positioning, your footwork, your technique, your smoothness, your transitions, all this kind of stuff. And he's brutally honest. So you have to have those few people that'll
yeah,
tell you, like, I don't need
yeah,
somebody telling me all your stuff is great, and even my girlfriend, she can tell now. She's watched so much wrestling and been around these guys so much in the last few years that, like, she'll watch it. She'll go, I don't know why you do that. That looks terrible.
nice,
And,
nice, nice.
so I got those 3 or 4 people that like I really trust in what they say to me, and they don't steer me wrong. They haven't yet. And like I said, Hollow's one of those guys that he he's the one who invests in yourself. You got to invest in these things. And I listen. He
Yeah,
goes, and then my girlfriend will say, "Has Mike ever steered you wrong?" And I'll go, "No." She'll go, "So then do what he says."
yeah,
And I'll go, "You're right.
not,
I was
yeah,
going to do it anyway."
yeah,
So you need those type of people that'll tell you what's good and what's bad and what not to do, and try this, don't try that.
yeah.
So
I just figured Spencer is probably under contract, so I would never hear back because those guys. I know there's rules, and stuff like that. So
yeah, he's under contract with the NWA. I don't know what their contract consists
right.
of. I've actually never really asked them, so I don't really
So
know. I still do independence things. I know those guys still. That's the other cool thing about the NWA. You could still work for the NWA, but you're
okay,
still allowed to do other stuff because I
so
know
there's
he
more
still.
freedom then.
I think there's more freedom, yeah, but I don't know if that means everybody's contract is like that. I don't.
Right,
I've never been, you know. I don't ask people about
right.
their business with that stuff.
So now I transition to some silly questions. And I'll be honest with you, I reached out to some people that and they gave me some stuff, and so this is where we're
Okay.
gonna get fun. Okay, so first of all, some silly questions. I have to ask this question. I don't know why. I googled this part right here. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you these questions. So when you order food through the drive-through, you talk in promo style. Have you ever done that?
Sometimes I have.
All right, all right,
Sometimes I think I have. Sometimes I think that there's been times where, depending on what I'm ordering, I might talk in a different voice too.
all right. Okay. Which hurts more, a steel chair or stepping on Legos?
Probably stepping on Legos.
Okay. Um, So when the opponent's trash talking you, how do you avoid from laughing at your opponent while he's doing
Well, that's a really good question. Even my girlfriend asks me that all the time. How do you guys not laugh at each other?
that?
I think you're just kind of like you're kind of accustomed to it. You know some of this, you know what they may or may not say, but there's been times where it's been pretty close. Um, I have had a few where it's been pretty, and I've had a few where I've almost gotten them too. Um, I think it's when you say something that they really wouldn't be expecting you to say at that point, and you just kind of shock them that it's hard not to kind of almost crack a smile. But you got to remember, like, there's a few times. I think there was one time recently where I had to like kind of cover my face because I was pretty close.
So do you cut promos in the grocery store?
I do all the time. I do them everywhere, everywhere.
All right.
I mean, almost anywhere. Shower, I do them everywhere.
Okay. You ever elbow drop the couch just because it looked at you wrong?
No, but I've elbow dropped the couch in a bed. I've done,
How did,
actually broke a bed. I actually broke one of our beds because I gave my girlfriend a belly to back on the bed and the bed broke. And we were just like, oh my God. We could had to
well,
go on my bed after that. It was
I
pretty stupid.
I have a story like that myself. My brother's 10 years younger than me. He's on the podcast with me on a weekly basis, and he was 10. I was 20. I was at my mom. I lived in my mom and dad's house. I was going through some stuff, and was there Saturday night. I was talking about Saturday night's main event. That's when Sid Vicious was there, and
Yeah.
I don't can't remember who he was facing, but of course he was like, "What do I smell? I smell a power bomb, right?" And my brother was never supposed to be in my room. My mom told me specifically, "Do not let your brother come in. That's late at night. Do not let him come in. He's younger than you. He needs his rest." And I'm like, so I hear a knock at the door, and he goes, "Can I come in?" I said, "You better. If you come in, you better be quiet." And so Sid Vicious was getting ready to come on there. He comes down, and I go to my brother. I looked at him. And I said, "What's that I smell? Do I smell a power bomb?" I picked him up on a power bomb move. I threw him to the bed. His feet kicked up, smashed the light fixture in the ceiling. It crashed to the ground. My dad was so pissed off. He comes up. He goes, "Well, I didn't get that. I didn't get to watch the end of this summer or smack or that show because I power bombed my brother through the light." So, but yeah,
Well, we used to wrestle. We used to wrestle all the time as kids too. And I had a group of friends. There was five of them. They were all brothers, and we used to do it. We all used to dress up in like full. I was like, Ultimate Warrior, Honky Tonk Man era,
yeah,
right? And they had like one bedroom where they would take all the mattresses off the bed, put four down, so the
yeah,
whole walls were like the
nice,
rope, and then
yeah,
you had the ring. And we used to do that at his house. And one night we were having people. I had friends over at my house, my parents' house.
yeah.
We were in the basement and we were wrestling, and somebody whipped one of my other friends, and he hit a water main and broke the water main in the basement.
Oh no,
Now that everybody ran from the house.
yeah, I bet.
All of them took off in all directions outside. And I went upstairs and had to tell my parents, and my parents are like, "Well, where'd they go? Where'd who?" Because now the parents are looking for their kids, and they're all running all over the neighborhood because they're scared to come back.
Yeah,
And yeah, that was probably one of the not so good moments of what happens when you decide to wrestle in your house. That's why I say don't try this at home.
right. So I talked to Chico Adams. He was on the show like last year, and he
Oh,
has nothing bad to say about you. Everything good to say about you. So is there a memory that you have of Chico Adams?
yeah, Chico was like one of the guys that I got in touch with about the extra work because I would see, actually he probably doesn't even know this, but and again it goes kind of back to what we were talking about. I just got back into wrestling and I was wrestling independence, and I would see Chico on like always on his Facebook. He's here, he's here, he's here, he's here. He's at Raw. I'm like, how is he getting to like do all this? And I'm like, man, I wish I could just be like Chico and just do extra work like he's doing. I'm like, this is so cool, man. He gets to do this, and like, how cool is that? And So I contacted Chico, and I ended up starting to do extra work, and then of course I was doing extra work all the time, and Chico was always there. And Chico actually grew up in Lee, which is 20 minutes from where I live in Pittsfield. So he actually worked at the same gym I worked at, Berkshire County, and I never met him before.
Okay.
I never knew that until I started, doing extra work with him. But like, it goes back to like looking at where you're at and somebody saying, I just wish I could be there. Because a year or so before I started doing extra work, I was like, man, I wish I could be like, he gets to do all this cool extra work. That's so cool. And lo and behold, like then all of a sudden it's him and I are together all the time. Because everywhere I go, he'd be there. He'd come, hey Chico, you coming up? Hey Chico, you coming up? And he would just be like, yeah, I'll be up there for this one. Are you doing it? Yeah, I'll be there. Oh no, I'm not doing that one, But no, I think like for him it was just he's the guy that like when I showed up to extra work, I knew how he conducted himself.
Yep.
And I said, I'm just gonna stick with this guy and do what he does. Because obviously he's doing something right. Because they invite him all the time. Yep. So it was like if I had any question, I went to Chico and I'd say, hey, when I get there, should I do this or should I have this ready or what do you think I should do with this or, and he would just always give me that advice of like, I would always make sure I wasn't dealing. There were guys that got kicked out of extra work, man. There was people that they'd be sent home, they do stupid things. People do stupid things all the time. And, some stuff not so stupid that you would think, but, like they get caught taking a picture and that was it,
I can't do it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously, you're a fan. You grew up like that, but you got to know where you are. Now you're an employee. These people are your coworkers.
Oh.
You're not a fan,
Yeah.
And so Chico was the one guy that, like, I was really glad that was always at the first few times I was at TV because, I stuck with him. He showed me the ropes. He showed me, like, where we go, what we do. This is where you go from here. After you see the trainer, you go here, you change, you go to this, you get changed back into this, you go, hey. So Chico was like the guy I modeled after. I was like, man, I got to be like that guy if I want to keep getting invited back. And so he was like nothing but like class in the back and just such a great guy to be here. And just nice, all around nice. I don't know how he's a heel. I always say to him, I'm like, how are you a heel? I'm like, that's the nicest thing I know.
I tried so hard to get him to do something heel on the podcast, and it was like it didn't work. I'm like, dude, man.
It's crazy. I always feel like, how are you a heel? You're like the nicest guy I've ever met in my life.
Right.
But they say that though. They say some of the best heels are the nicest guys, and I don't know. But yeah, Chico, that's great, man. It's even when he comes home, I try to get him. I go, come to the gym, come down to the Nautilus. They're always asking about you, and so. Well, yeah, that's cool, Chico. Yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about him either.
So there's a guy named Steve Nova. I don't know if you know him.
I do.
Okay, so he's had some questions. He wanted to know how did it feel how did it feel when the table didn't break during the Pittsfield street fight?
It was more of a surprise than anything. that was something that like. When I came off, when the Music Man hit me with that power bomb from the second rope, and I just stopped. It was like, what? And so I'm like, oh my God, it didn't break. So the Music Man went up and came off with a splash, and it didn't break.
Oh.
So now I'm like, man. So like, why isn't this breaking? Like, this is supposed to be the whole match was super fun. Everybody loved it. It was over. Here's the big spot at the end. Big table break. I'm going to get up, finish the match. I'm going to hit him with a guitar. It's over. Table doesn't break. Now where we're at. Now we got like, but I'm thinking to myself, okay, one or two things. People are at least sitting there going, wow, they don't use fake tables. Or they're going, oh, that's gotta suck. Somebody did do something right. But yeah, come to find out, like that was the same night when I got to Dynasty. The table didn't break there either. so I didn't feel as bad. So for their match that they had, where it was supposed to be another table break, that table didn't break over in Dynasty, and they got it from the same person. So I'm not going to say any names because he's my friend, but he knows. And he was like, "Oh my God, what? You mean it did?" I said, "No, it didn't." He goes, "You got to be kidding."
I was watching a match I fell in love with indie wrestling about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because you guys put your bodies on the line, and it's like nothing else I've ever seen before, right? And I've seen a match between Chase Stevens and Damian Wayne, and it was supposed to be another table break, table spot, and Chase put Damian on that table, and it didn't break, and all of a sudden you've seen that it was straight, and it flipped. It's all it did was slide down, and Damian's neck hit the next table.
Boom.
I'm like, oh damn, and he got up and he went through. He finished the match, and he was like, so when I heard about this table not breaking, I'm like, oh my God. So I say that to say this: you guys put your bodies on the line, and as a fan, I appreciate that because you guys make it so real.
Well, I think for me too is like, what I always said when I was like younger, I was like, oh, I'd never do that stuff. But man, I've had so much fun in some of those matches. If you're working with somebody you can trust and that you have a good relationship with and chemistry with, I had three great. I want to see how I want to phrase this because that's one great and two really good tables matches with Punk. And if you go back to my YouTube and you watch the one from Burlington, Vermont with Punk and I, that crowd and that match was just, I don't talk about many matches much. I don't like a lot of my work. A lot of times I'm always my hardest critic on everything I do. I watch it all back and I watch it all back 1,000 times and I second guess this and that and everything. But man, it's like, that's one of those matches that I watch and I go, wow. I'm like, that was so fun. And so, that crowd was with us every single step of the way. They loved it. And those are the matches. That's even like the match of Music Man and the Street Fight. They were with us for everything. That's why it makes me so mad that table didn't break at the end.
Absolutely. Is there a ref that you would like to see in Dynasty?
There was, and he had the opportunity, and then he bailed. It was Ref Major. And Dan Tanaka. I keep saying that I just know it's far for Dan. But I've tried to get Dan to go to Dynasty. I'd like to see him out there. Ref Major was going to do it, was scheduled the last show, I believe, and he ended up having to back out for some reason. And he'd been trying to get there, and then all of a sudden he had to back out last minute. Because he works hard too, man. He goes to seminars, he does all that stuff. Dan's been around forever. Dan's just a great referee, and he's great anywhere he goes. He refs everywhere. He's the guy, again, when I started repping, Dan was the guy I went to for everything. How do I do this? What do I do here? Right. What should I do for this? How do you think I should take that or do that?
So now there's another fan of yours, Nathan Richards, has this to say. All I can really say about Rando is that be you a fan, a wrestler, or a couple of dudes trying to film some great wrestling, he always has time to stop and chat and make you feel like you matter to him. He's truly one of the nicest guys in the business. That speaks volumes on who you are as a man and as a talent in the business, man. I appreciate that. That's so when I read that was cool.
That's great, man. That's fantastic. Like, because that's really, so I always, when I came back and people said, well, what's your name? What's your this or that? I said, man, I'm coming back as me. I'm coming back as Justin Rando. I'm coming back as who I am. If you don't like me, if I'm boring, if you don't care about what I do, if you don't think this is good, then you don't like me. If you like me, then you like me. So when I'm out there, it's like what you're seeing is what you get. Like, that's me. you know,
Right.
whether it's with the fans or whether it's in the ring. And I think that's probably the one thing I love the most about it is the fans. Like that's why I love being me because I'm a baby face, but I'm me. So that's why I'm a baby face. Because if you like me, you're gonna like me. If you don't like me, that's fine. I got fans who don't. I got people who don't like me that are fans because they like the bad guy.
Yeah, of
But they
course.
still like me. You know, sometimes they still say like, "Man, I don't ever like the good guys," but I do like. Um, I don't. You know, I mean, I send stuff to people all the time. I'm sending you something. You asked me about, you know, if I would send something, how much it would be. I said, I'm not gonna charge you anything for that. Like you're having me on as a guest. Like I'm gonna send you something. Um, and that's how I am. Like the guy in the grocery store today was a cashier. He was working, and I walked in, and when I walked away, he said, "Oh, it's very nice to meet you." So you call my merchandise table with your daughter when you come in to the XWA show. I said, I'll have some stuff for you. Um, because that's I think what I really always I really didn't care about uh, you know, being famous, I guess, but like I just wanted people to like me for what I was doing and for who I was and give them something that like at 44 years old and I'm still doing this and I'm still being able to do it at the levels that I'm doing it at. Like I always tell people like don't give up just because you're getting older or you know you feel like it's too late. Like I could have said it was too late for me at 40.
Yeah.
You know, the day I turn 40, the day after I come back and I have my first match back, I could have said I'm too old. Like I'm never going to get to this level, but
Right.
I just keep pushing and training and doing what I can do and whatever I can do and meeting the people that I can meet that are going to make it happen and help me make it happen. And if I get to another level, awesome. If I get to a bigger level, if I get to the biggest level, like it's because I did it the right way. I did it, you know, I didn't, you know, I found the right people and I had the right people training me and I had the right people helping me out and had the right people cheering for me. It's great when I get to do it in my hometown and, you
Right.
know, people, I do every World of Hurt show. I go out at intermission if I can. If I don't, I have Tammy texting me saying, you need to get out here and sign this for somebody. You need to come out and take a picture with this kid. And I had people that in Burlington at this very last show I did in Burlington want to take a picture with me because 2 years ago they took a picture with me in Burlington, and now their son's 2 years older and he's this big, and he wants another picture with me, and he wants, you know, so I'll sign stuff for him. If you buy my shirt, I'll sign stuff. I'll sign a photo for you. I'll give that to you. I'll give you something else half the time. I'll give you a keychain. Um, I love the fans. Like that's my favorite thing about it is meeting the fans and having them like tell me what they like. Like, you know, I love seeing you do this match. This was my favorite part. I had one girl at her first show 2 shows ago in Pittsfield. Her dad draws,
Mm.
and he draws wrestlers. And he came up to me and said, I'm going to draw you next time
Wow.
when I come. Now they're starting to get signs in Pittsfield. That's what's really,
Nice.
you don't see a lot of signs at independent shows.
No,
Very rarely.
we're really no.
Pittsfield's starting to get a lot of rando signs going around.
All right.
And
All right. All right.
love that. I love seeing that. But this girl was so excited in her first show. So excited. I don't know how old she was, maybe like 11, 12. Um, I finished the match. I just won. And I'm walking by, and she is jumping up and down. Now, I met her at intermission. And I had these new elbow pads made, elbow sleeves that said Rando and had my logo on it, right? And as I'm walking by, I just took it off and I just gave it to her. And they came back the next show, which was the last one, and they were like, "Do you remember us?" I said, "Yeah, of course I remember you. I remember all the fans. That's the crazy
Yeah.
thing. Is I remember." And he goes, "I drew you." So there is. If you're on my Facebook, you'll find it from the last show where I did the street fight. There's a picture. He drew me on the sign that says Rando Rules or whatever.
Nice.
And
Nice.
signed it right underneath it for him.
Nice.
I just make sure that I get a point to try to meet everybody. And you know, if they want a picture, they want an autograph. If they can't afford an autograph, if they can't afford a picture, just give it to them. you know.
Well, when you messaged back to me and said that meant the world to me. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because I mean, like, if you know, when I remember being a kid, like I was a huge baseball fan growing up,
Yeah.
and you know, it was hard to get autographs back then. And I remember my first Red Sox game I ever got an autograph at was Jody Reed, second baseman for the Red Sox, and he became my favorite player instantly.
Yeah.
It was like I followed him when he went to the Padres. I think he went to the Dodgers and then the Padres. But I mean, like, he was like instantly my favorite player. Now he never did anything great, but he signed my autograph. You know, he signed my baseball, my first baseball I ever got signed. So it's like I look at that, and there's guys that, like, if they come up, if kids come up and they're like, oh man, can I get a photo? And I do usually like $3 photos. It's 2 for $5. I do them smaller so that they're more affordable for people to do them. I do 8x10s framed. I do some that are more expensive if they want them. I do have now my action figure.
No way.
Oh yeah. So
that is sick as hell.
So Mikey Cheese, another guy on the Independents, did this. And he did. Scanned my head, did my figure.
That is badass. That's awesome.
That's the coolest thing, to have your own action figure.
That is cool.
And I wish I could do, you know, I think I had like 10 of them done the first time, and I sold all 10. And I still got to get more because there's still people that are saying that they want it. They're like, yeah, that one's awesome.
Sick. That's sick. How much is that?
$25 if you get the white version. Painted, I have to send it to a different guy who's in Brooklyn, and he charges like $75 to paint it. So now what I do is I give the option. I say the figure for $25, it's white. You can either send it to him, or so that way you can take the figure for $25 and you can have it and you can decide, like, do I really want it painted, or is a white one cool enough? Most of the time, if you get it and you're white and it's a white one, it's really cool. They're looking at it, and then they see the painted one, they're like, nah, I gotta get that painted. So
a guy like me would, if I sent you $25, I get a white one.
You get a white one, yeah. And then you could decide if you wanted to either paint it yourself if you're a good painter.
No, I mean, is it a package then, or
what's that?
Does it come in a package of itself?
No.
Okay.
He just does it. It's just white, white resin printed out, and then, like I said, I sent 3 of them out originally to get painted. One was for myself, one was for my girlfriend. She keeps it at work on her desk because everybody there knows I'm a wrestler, so they want to see it. And then one was for my father.
Well, I can tell you this right now.
I gave my father the white one. He goes, I don't want just a white one. Why are you giving me a white one? Get it painted. He goes, so he said, send it to the guy. Have it painted. So I had to say, have it painted.
I can tell you right now, one of the things I do is I support you guys. And what does it cost to get a painted one?
So it'd be $25 for the figure and $75 to have it painted. But what I'm trying to do is, when I sent those 3 out, and I said to the guy, so I end up being the first actual wrestler he ever met of a figure that he painted. So he painted 3 for me for a cheaper price. And I said, one's for my girlfriend, one's for my father, one's for me. But now I have a good relationship with him. I got 2 other people who want a painted one.
Okay.
So if you wanted one painted and I get a couple more, the more I send to him that he has to paint, the cheaper they are.
Okay.
Because he'll send them out in bulk, and I'll try to get them. So I have 2 other people who want them painted now, and then if I can get everything in alignment to where all the figures are here, they're all white, and they all go out at the same time, I can try to see what he can do for a group rate on a bulk rate where it'd be like maybe $50 to get it painted.
All right. Well, we'll talk after the show.
We'll definitely.
So when I close the show, don't go nowhere. Okay.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions.
Perfect.
When the lights go down and the crowd goes home, what does wrestling mean to you?
It means I want to just be alone and sit on the couch the next day and try to do as little as possible, but that doesn't end up happening. Usually I end up at the gym. I hate when that happens, honestly. I hate when that happens. My match ends, if I'm the main event, I'm out there trying to walk around and talk to as many people, and they're all trying to go home, and I'm trying to keep them there. I'm like, no, come on. Don't, what do you want? You want a picture? You want an autograph? You want this? I hate it because that's the most fun part, man. I just, like I said, when the lights go out and you're upstairs changing, and I think the last show was the greatest when I was upstairs changing after the main event, knowing I was heading to another show.
Yeah.
To get another reaction from people.
Wow.
And then finally at 11 o'clock coming home with Spencer was like a nice hour ride home from Albany. Him and I were talking, and that was fun. That was great. Getting to spend time doing that, you know. Or like if I have a show and it's like finally getting back to the hotel with like Tammy, and we can just like shower and relax and put on some TV and just lay there. And then she has to listen to me talk about the whole night for the next hour.
No, I take my podcast to the indie show XIW, Extreme Impact Wrestling, here in Panama City. I take my podcast and I do a live broadcast, and I do some commentary down there with them. So I stay around, and a lot of the wrestlers, they stay around too. So my last question is, if this interview was your last promo ever, what would your final words be?
It took me a long time to realize that anything is really possible as long as you put in the hard work, the time, and the effort. You're never too old. You're never too small. And you can have and live your dream every day, no matter what level you do it at. Because I always wanted to be a baseball player, and I always said, man, if I even got to play in single A or double A, I'd be happy. And now as a wrestler, I've been able to look at that and say, for the last 4 years, I've put in a lot of time, a lot of hard work. There's been a few disappointments, but they've been far and few between. And I've been able to ride the roller coaster of pro wrestling for the last 4 years to where I've gotten to work on Monday Night Raw. I always said to my mother before she passed away, I said, someday I'm going to be on Monday Night Raw. I never said in what capacity, but I've been there. I've been on SmackDown. I've been on the Survivor Series. And I'd love to have said I wrestled on them. But really, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because the experiences I've had and the people I've met from the indies, from guys like Chico, from guys like Spencer, Teddy Goods, guys that have been around as long as I have and done the things that I've gotten to do. And, it's to get the recognition in my own hometown has probably been the biggest. I think that's probably now what when I left that grocery store today and I said to Tammy, she goes, man, no matter where we go, everybody knows you as Rando and as the champ. It's almost you kind of get that Rocky feeling of, when he's in Philadelphia, it's like he's still Rocky, man. It doesn't matter. It was like, hey, yo, Rock. Now it's like, as people drive by me and I might be outside and I hear, go get him Saturday, champ. And it's like, I don't even know who it was.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't think whatever level you do it at, it really matters as long as you do it 100% with 100% love of the business. Then at the end of the day, it's a big payoff when you have those kind of reactions no matter where you go. Yeah. Especially in your hometown.
Yeah. Thank you. So, huge Pop Wrestling fans that watch that are going to watch this at a later date as I upload it to YouTube. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Rando for the time that you spent with us, sharing your stories, etc., sharing the love for the business you had. You're a class guy, man. You're 100% class guy, and I just appreciate the time that I had with you. Huge Pop Wrestling fans, I thank you. As we always say every time we end the show, we're huge Pop Wrestling fans for life. And thank you guys.